All right, so welcome everyone. Thanks for signing up for this webinar at the end of the day. I'm Emma Thompson. I think I've emailed with all of you now, so nice to meet you in a different way. I'm going to be leading the presentation today. I hope you're all well and safe, and I know these are strange times, but I'm thankful for this opportunity to connect with a lot of you that I don't think we would have had previously. And I hope you'll leave this meeting feeling empowered to contribute to the Schoenberg database, because all of you can. This is something you can accomplish from anywhere as long as you have an internet connection and some sort of knowledge of manuscript data. So this is a perfect quarantine activity. We are recording the whole meeting, and we're going to share it publicly afterwards. So if you're uncomfortable contributing your questions at the end, or you don't want your questions included in the recording, just contact me afterwards and we can edit those out. And again, you're all muted, but feel free to type in questions in the chat as we go along. So this is just an overview of how the presentation is going to go. I'm going to start off talking about the mission and the scope, and a little bit about the history of the Schoenberg database. This is going to impact your understanding of why the database is structured and used, and why we do things the way we do. So it's important that we go over all of that. Then I'll walk you through our data model and demonstrate live in the database how to search and use some of our user tools, and then show you how to create a personal observation, which is one of the easiest ways that you can contribute data. And then afterwards, we should have a lot of time for questions. I want to start out by briefly explaining how the Schoenberg database fits into the wider umbrella of the University of Pennsylvania. We're a program within the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies at Penn, which is a whole ecosystem of projects and opportunities and programs for studying manuscripts in the digital age. And I've listed some of those other projects and programs there. You can read about all of these on our website, schoenberginstitute.org. And if you're a manuscript person, I encourage you to check out the Schoenberg Institute website to see all of the different opportunities that we offer. The Schoenberg database was a core, the cornerstone project of the Schoenberg Institute when it got started. But this means that we're very separate from the Penn Library's catalog, and we sort of operate independently of that. And that's important to remember as you consider our mission and the scope of the database. So the Schoenberg database captures pre-modern manuscript descriptions as they appear in various sources, really any source, and then links together observations about the same manuscript as it is studied and described over time. So our scope is global. We're not just the Penn Library's collection of manuscripts. And we're not really a database of manuscripts at all. Our name is kind of a misnomer in that way. We're really a database of observations about manuscripts. We're taking our data from secondary sources most of the time. It's rare that we at the database actually have a manuscript in front of us when we're creating data. Our goal is to one day have at least one observation of every manuscript in the world. So we have a lot of work to do, and I hope you all will help us achieve that goal. So what we do is we find sources that describe manuscripts and repeat as closely as verbatim as possible what those sources say. And this was the mission that was set out by our founder, Larry Schoenberg. He was a Penn alum and a manuscript collector, and he started building the database in an Excel file back in 1997. He began it as a personal project to track the historic and current location of the world's manuscript books, as well as their value as they moved across time and place. So the database has been through a lot of technical and organizational iterations since then, but its basic premise and mission has stayed the same. What we're doing is storing metadata about manuscripts. When Larry started with his special interest in tracking price changes, most of the data came from auction and sale catalogs. So our real strength is auction catalogs beginning in the 19th century all the way up till now. But over the past 20 years, we've expanded the sources that we use in the database to include library and institutional catalogs, exhibition catalogs, bookseller websites, Facebook posts, newspaper articles. Anytime a person mentions a manuscript and describes it, we can capture that data and share it with the world. So what we're doing is building a data set that researchers can consult to track the provenance and descriptive history of a manuscript over the course of its existence. And one of the caveats of our data is that we don't make any claims about objectivity or truth or right or wrong information. We're just repeating what other sources have documented about a manuscript. So if an auction catalog makes a weird claim about a manuscript's provenance because they're trying to sell it, or if we have a really old catalog that contains out-of-date information, we don't change that data when we enter it in the database. We enter the data as it is in the sources. And that's because our mission is to not just track the movement of manuscripts across time, but we're also documenting changes in scholarship and cataloging practices. And that's one of the reasons why we've added people as one of our sources. So you all are this stick figure down here now. Our users have firsthand knowledge of the manuscripts that we're studying, and we want to incorporate your personal knowledge into the database as well. So now you can contribute your own knowledge in the form of personal observations, which I'll show you how to do in a second. So a bit more about the scope of our data. I already said that we're global in scope, but we are limited in certain ways. So we're interested in manuscripts that were produced as a part of manuscript culture. So in the West, that means pre-modern manuscripts, or ones written roughly before 1600, or that's not a strict date, but around that time. For non-Western material, we don't have a strict date cutoff because manuscript cultures continued to exist even up till now. We're also interested in codices of 5 or more folios. We're not interested in fragments usually. This used to be a really strict limit. Since we opened up the database for user contributions, we've gotten rid of the strict 5 or more folio rule. So if you're a researcher and folio or fragment information is important to you, you're welcome to add fragment data. But just know that we don't have a lot of data previously about fragments, so it'll be difficult for you to link up data. We're also metadata focused, so we don't store images. And I know this is disappointing for a lot of people because everyone wants to actually see the manuscripts, but we don't have the capacity to store images. We have over 240,000 entries right now from over 14,000 sources, so there's no way we could store images for all of those. We do link to them when they're available, so that's you are able to find images sometimes through our data, but we don't store them ourselves. So here's the basic structure of the Schoenberg database, the 5 core record types that we have. You need to have this diagram in your head to understand how to navigate the database. So you don't have to memorize this right now or anything, but just keep it in mind as we look at the database live in a few minutes. And I'll just explain the 5 record types briefly. So sources, the top record here, describe manuscripts. So the source records represent auction catalogs, book dealer websites, institutional catalogs, things like that. And then each manuscript that is described in a source will get an entry record. Entries represent observations derived from a single source. So a single lot in an auction catalog or a single item in a library catalog. And then as the same manuscript is observed in various sources over time, we link up the entries that describe the same manuscript via the manuscript record. And this is really a linking node. It doesn't contain any unique data itself. It's just the manuscript record is just an easy way for you to see all of the entries in the database that describe the same manuscript. And then we also have two authority files that we manage in-house, our name authority and our place authority. These authority files facilitate searching and indexing and general discoverability in the database. Our name authority file relates to authors, artists, scribes, provenance agents, and institutions who owned or produced manuscripts. We follow the Library of Congress standards when possible, and we link to VIAF when possible in our authority, in our name authority. But this often isn't possible because a lot of the people and institutions that we have evidence for are not, they don't have corresponding records in the Library of Congress or anywhere else besides the Schoenberg Database. So that's why we have our own in-house name authority standard as well. And the same goes for places. These are geographic locations where manuscripts were produced or owned. We link to the Getty Thesaurus of Geographic Names and GeoNames or VIAF when available. We store coordinate information, and we also link our name and place authority files so we can generate geolocation data for where collections were physically owned by tracking where collectors were physically located. So the next slide is just showing you a few snippets of data that you'll find in these different record types. So you'll see here we have a source, a 1997 Sotheby's sale. There was a manuscript for sale. In this sale, lot 3, it was an Aristotle manuscript. And Larry Schoenberg bought this manuscript. So then in 2006, in Larry's collection catalog, we see the same manuscript described again. It now has a new shelf mark, LJS 101. And so in the database, we've linked these two entries via a manuscript record here, which I'll show you live in the database in a second. And then throughout these records, Larry Schoenberg's authority file exists, as well as a link to Sarasota, which is where his collection was based when he owned this manuscript. So that's a basic overview of how the database works. Again, we don't make any claims for objectivity. And our data is also inconsistent a lot of the times, and that's because after 20 years of entering data and data standards changing over time, it's not possible for us to go back and instantly bring up previously entered data to current data standards. When Larry started the database in the Excel file, there wasn't really any content standards or authority files or strict rules about representing what the sources said. So as you navigate the database, you'll see red flags on all of our legacy data records, and that will indicate that you should proceed with caution when you're using the data and consult the original source if possible. All right, so let's actually look at the database. And I think I saw most of you have created accounts already. So I hope you've played around a little bit with the database. Here, a little bit so you can see better. So this is the home page. And you'll see we have a list of all the different things you can do and ways you can interact with our other special projects. I'm just going to show you briefly how to do the basics of navigating the database. So you'll notice we have a general keyword search here and an advanced search, which I'll show you in a second. But we also have all of these facets on the side here. And this is what you should use if you're just coming to browse the database. These are all of the data fields in the entries. And remember that when you're searching the database, you're searching on entries. You're not searching on manuscript records. That's because manuscript records don't contain data. They're just linking nodes. So keep that in mind when you see these numbers here, like books of hours, you see 15,704. That means there's 15,704 entries in the database about books of hours, not 15,000 unique manuscripts. So as you scroll down, we have a lot of facets. You can search by buyer, selling agent, source institution, and you'll see at the bottom of each facet list, there's a little more link. And if you click on that, you can go to the full list of all of the facets in the database for this particular data set. So for source institution here, you see they're automatically sorted by number. So we're seeing the highest number of entries with these source institutions in them. The BNF is the big one here. If you're looking for a specific institution, you can sort in alphabetical order and then navigate through them this way. Let's just go back. If you click the show more, you can go through every single facet we offer, which is a lot. We have descriptive information as well, but that tends not to be the best way to search. If you're searching via facet, I recommend looking for personal or institutional names or authors, titles, things like that. But let's say you're coming to the database and you have a specific manuscript you want to find. In that case, you should use the advanced search, which I'm going to click on here. And I'm just going to pull up the manuscript we were looking at in the data model diagram, which was LJS 101. So I'm going to search 101 for the cat for lot number, and then Schoenberg for provenance. So I got two results, and the first one is the entry I was looking for. So if I click on this ID number here, we'll get to see the full entry. And here's that red warning label that I was talking about. So this entry is a legacy record. It was entered into the database before current standards took place in 2015. And if we scroll down, we can see all of the metadata attached to this record. Here's the source information, and you can click on that to go to the source record. So this is the first square at the top of the data model diagram. And you'll see we have information about this catalog, and then a link here to all 164 entries that derive from Larry's collection catalog. Let's go back to the entry. And you'll see a lot of things that you can click on. So these are all authority files. So if I click on Aristotle's name here, we'll go to his name authority file. And you'll see we have a link to the VIAF record. We have his life dates, which I guess are approximations. And then we have a link to Greece, which is where he lived. And if you click on Greece, you get to our authority file for Greece, which has coordinate information, a link to the Getty thesaurus. And then we also have a list here of all of the other names in the Schoenberg database that are linked to Greece. So this is really useful if you're doing research on a particular area, manuscript production or manuscript ownership. Go back to the entry. You can see we separate the entry sections by source data, manuscript details, which is descriptive information, and then provenance information, which is especially powerful. And then we also show you who created the record and who last updated it. So these are users in the Schoenberg database. But this is an entry for that's derived from a collection catalog. If I wanted to see all of the data that we have about this particular manuscript, I need to go to the manuscript record, which we link to right here. So remember that the manuscript record is just aggregating the information from all of the entries that are linked to it. So we have a list of the associated titles here. We have a last known location field. This is a deprecated field now. because we realized it wasn't indicative of what we can actually provide concretely as a data source. We never know the last known location, but we do know the most recent observation. So that's what's linked to here. And you'll see that the most recent observation comes from a 2018 source at Penn from Open, which is another Schoenberg Institute project where you can download images and metadata about manuscripts. So that's a good place to go if you're looking for images. Open. And then if we just continue down the manuscript record here, we see a list of the entries and their aggregated provenance data. So this is a really quick way to see all of the different provenance agents that are mentioned in each of the entries that are linked up. But if you want to compare all of the entries and all of their data fields, what you should do is go up to the table view option here. And this is a table where you can compare all of the entries side by side. So they start in chronological order. So you'll see we start in the 2018 open source. Here's Larry's collection catalog we looked at that. And if we scroll over, we see the 1997 Sotheby's sale where Larry bought this manuscript. And then we also have a record from Thomas Phillips's collection catalog in 1837. And so if you just scroll down, you can see all of the other data fields. And what's great is in the comparison, you can see in the 1837 Phillips catalog, this entry here, you see we don't really have a lot of data. We just have a title, an author, a date, and not very much provenance information, 2 provenance agents. But if we scroll back over to the more recent data, you can see just how much more information we have in the newer records, including a lot more provenance information. And now we know that this manuscript is at Penn. So that's the basics for searching and navigating the database. If I go back to the home page, I just want to show you a little bit more about searching. So let's go back to the advanced search. And I'm just going to do the same search I did again. And this doesn't take a lot of time, but if you had a more complicated search, it'd take you a while to enter in your advanced search again. So we do have the option in our search results here to save your search. And if you click on that, you get a notification that it was saved successfully. Remember to log in first because you won't be able to do any of this if you're not logged in. But once you've saved your search and you go to your searches up here, we have a history. So your recent search history will appear there, I guess, in your current logged in session. But then save searches will save even after you log out. So then you can easily pull up the entries you're working with or searches that you're working on. We also have bookmarks. So this little tab right here, if you click on it, it'll change to yellow, I think, in all browsers. So now this entry is bookmarked. And if you navigate over to your sidebar here and your bookmarks tab, all of the records that you've bookmarked will be saved here for easy access. And you can bookmark anything, entries, manuscript records, sources, names, anything you're interested in. We also have a dashboard area. So here, I'm just going to navigate back to the home page. So anytime you're logged in your sidebar, you have a dashboard. And if you go there, it will show you the most recent entries you contributed. I think the last 5 entries, as well as sources and manuscript records. You can check up on other people's activity. So you can see what other people have been working on in the database. This takes a little while to load depending on how busy things And then we also have a forum, which is super helpful for new users especially. We have a message board for announcements. We have a help message board, which is especially important. This is a good place to see commonly asked questions, more advanced research questions, things like that. And you're all welcome to post on the forum. Anyone with a user account can ask a question in this way. We have a specific section for name authority questions. You can advertise current research that you're doing. And then we also have a catalog wish list. So you can post here sources that you'd like to see added to the database. And they should be ones that are accessible online that people can access easily, because volunteers come to this message board to find sources to work on. So that's the basics for navigating the database. Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to show you. I'm just going to do a quick general search just to show you this. So you can download any search results in a CSV file and take our data and do what you will with it, as long as you give us credit. It's licensed under a Creative Commons license. So anytime you're searching, I just did this basic search for Boethius. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, there's an option here to download the results as CSV. So if you just click that, it'll ask you if you're sure. You'll get a notification that the export's being prepared. This might take a while because Boethius is in a lot of entries, but eventually you'll get a notification. Oh, there it is, saying that your CSV is ready to download, and you can click on this link here to download it instantly. And you can also go to the exports page in your sidebar. And anything that you export will be accessible here for 24 hours. All right, I think that's all of the basic navigation. Now I'll show you how to contribute. So let's just look at this entry here. We see it's a legacy record, and it's not linked to a manuscript record. So that means it hasn't been linked up to any other entries yet. And this is coming from an 1893 Sotheby's sale. So we don't have any recent observations of this manuscript. But let's say that you do know where this manuscript is now. You have evidence that this lot was purchased at some point and ended up somewhere. You can leave a comment on an entry, which is what someone has done here at the bottom, and they're telling us that this manuscript is now at Cambridge. So that's great that someone left this comment, right? Because that's better than nothing. But this is a plain text field. So this information is not going to appear in any search results if someone searches the database. So if you were using the facets on the homepage to look at all of the manuscripts at the Cambridge University Library, this manuscript wouldn't appear there because the data isn't structured in any way. So a way better way of contributing information from leaving comments is to create a personal observation. And we have a link for you to do that on every single entry in the database. And I'm just going to open this in a new window. So a personal observation is an entry just like an entry derived from a traditional source. What's different is that you are the source of the information, not a traditional catalog. So this is a way for you to quickly tell us your knowledge about manuscripts. And there's two steps to this. So the first step, like creating a regular entry, is you have to create the source record first. And the source of your personal observation is just information about you. So you'll see the observation date automatically fills in with today's date. My username is automatically filled in as the observer. So I just have to enter in a few data fields here to create a source. And anytime you're entering data in the database, you'll see these question marks next to every single data field. And if you click on that question mark, you'll reveal the tooltip for that field, which will tell you what type of data we're looking for, how you should enter the data, content standards, things like that. So be sure to consult the tooltips every time you enter data, because each field has specific rules for what goes into it. So I'm just going to enter in, for personal observation, the description, you're just telling us like what the point of this observation is. And in this case, we're just contributing new location information. So I'm just going to call it a provenance update. And then I'm going to add Cambridge as the institution. And again, anytime you're working with persons or institutional names, you're going to have an as recorded field and an authority file field. The as recorded field is more important when you're transcribing data from published sources. In the case of personal observations, it's not important. So you can add it if you'd like, but I'm just going to add the authority file. And again, these authority files are the only way things are found via the facets in the database. So you, please always use authority files when you're contributing data. All right, so that's it for the source record. So I'm going to continue to entry details. And now we're at the add an entry screen. I'm going to go back to this comment here and just copy what Bill said. So the shelf mark is that. And you'll see there's a lot of data fields here. None of them are mandatory. So when you're transcribing data from a source, you only put the data that appears in the source. So if they don't tell you a title, you don't put one in. For personal observations, if you're in a reading room and you have the manuscript in front of you, go crazy and add as much details as you want. Well, that's wonderful. But if you're just contributing provenance information, you can leave all of this blank because we contributed what's important, which was the new shelf mark up above. So I'm just going to add Cambridge here as a provenance agent, and that's it. So I'll just save that. So here's my new entry. And you'll see that took like 1 or 2 minutes more time than it would have taken someone to just add a comment. But we have so much richer data now. We have a link to the Cambridge University Library Authority files. So now this entry is linked up to all of the other entries that relate to Cambridge, Cambridge University Library. And you'll also see that we have a link to a manuscript record now. And that's because when you create a personal observation to an entry, your entry is automatically linked to that entry. So now we have a manuscript record. And if we go to that, you'll see that we have a most recent observation, and it's my personal observation saying that this manuscript is now at Cambridge. So it's pretty simple, and it's a really important thing for our users to do. Because a lot of our data comes from auction and sale catalogs, we don't have current location or most recently observed location information for a lot of our manuscripts. So anytime you're using the database, please create personal observations when you know something more about where a manuscript is now. All right, so I can't see anything, so I'm just going to stop sharing. And I'm going to let you all unmute yourselves if you would like, and we can go over questions. Were there any questions in the chat, Lynn, that we should talk about?
Yes. Sorry, I'm replying to someone's question, but maybe I'll just answer it. There have been, in the chat, there have been quite a few questions. One that came in privately to me from N.A. Sparks. I'm not sure of your first name. But they asked about what the 2015 standard was that you mentioned.
Okay.
You want to answer that, or?
Well, I can try and then you can jump in because I might forget something. So the 2015 standard relates to our big redevelopment project, which was funded by the NEH. So that's when we opened the database to contributors all over the world. Our data standards changed a lot then because we added as recorded fields for a lot of fields that didn't have them previously. So we let like unlimited provenance agents occur, I think. We added authority files for the languages and the material. And then we also started linking our place authority to the Getty thesaurus. And we linked our name and place authority files. And I believe we did link to VIAF before then, Lynn, but I wasn't involved with name authority.
To VIAF until
okay.
redevelopment.
Okay.
So the standard, the 2015 standard, it's not like a published standard. It's just our rules. And so, you know, it's what we've put in the tooltips. It's what's in the user manual. And Emma can show you when we get back to the homepage how you can access the user manual. And also we have a data dictionary. Essentially, like other than, the database is kind of designed so that the standards are sort of imposed upon you as you work so that you don't have to think too much about it. Other than that, we're kind of lax about the standard. Someone just asked about if we fact check, like, are we going to go fact check the catalog? And we can't do that. We can't fact check everything. And sometimes, like, we might have access to the Cambridge catalog, but for a lot of these, we're not going to have access to the catalogs. We don't have access to we can't fact check your personal observations. So what we ask instead is that users use their judgment. And because you've got the source information, you can go back and fact check it if you have a question. And if you disagree with it, you can add a personal observation saying what you disagree with. So we just add layers, and you can add an infinite number of personal observations to a manuscript record, right? You can link an infinite number of entries to a manuscript record. So you have that information there, the user, to make your own judgments on what is good or bad data. You can judge what is good or bad data. We have thumbs up and thumbs down buttons for each entry, for comments, you know, in various places, so that you can, you know, so that you agree or disagree with something. You know, if someone says that the author is one person and another person says, no, it's this person, we try to collect those and make it available for you to decide. There was a question about paleography. So we don't collect data on paleography. That was something that Larry never did. We can't retroactively go back and add that data. And we don't really have an authority for paleography anyway. Like, it's such a complicated thing to describe, like the terminology. No one agrees upon terminology, and so we just decided it was not something that we were going to be able to fix, and so we left it out. But you can put, there's a space other information in every entry where you can put paleographic data if you'd like to. You just don't have a way of structuring it. But it is useful to have sometimes, and you know, when you're trying to find links, if you can say what the script is. And you addressed downloading the data. That was another question.
Yeah.
Someone asked about papyrus manuscripts in the database. There are. I referred them to the Facets. You can go to the Facet for material and see exactly what's in there. not comprehensive. You know, we may not have as many papyrus manuscripts as there are in the world, but it's just what we've, you know, what has happened to have been entered. I think that's most of the chat questions that I've gotten so far. Links are made manually by humans. Yes.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And there is, when you go to the manuscript linking tool, there is, which should be another webinar, how to link manuscripts. There is an attempt at trying to help you narrow down possibilities. So let's just call it a work in progress. It's really difficult to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's see, there's another question. How to move from a view of single entries to manuscript records. I want to get a view of how many actual manuscript items are represented in the Schoenberg database. That's a good one.
Why don't I share my screen again? All right, so when you're logged in, if you go to your dashboard, and I should say, since I'm an administrator, I have a lot more options in my sidebar here than you have. You obviously can't manage users if you're not an administrator, so your sidebar will look a bit briefer than mine. But you should have a manage manuscripts table here. So if we go here, here are all of the manuscript records, and it looks like we have 26,220 right now. But again, the manuscript records just aggregate data. So you're not going to be able to search using the entry data in this table. If you click on the manuscript records, here's the one I just created. This is the most recent one. You're back in the entry view again. But this manage manuscripts table is where you go for the list of all the manuscript records.
I think there's a facet for manuscript records. So while it doesn't give you a total number, am I making that up if you scroll down?
Let's see.
Manuscript, yeah. So this gives you some idea of
This one has 37 entries linked to it. Let's look at this. What's going on here? The Beatty manuscript.
That's a lot of entries.
Wow. Yeah.
And I might have missed this because I was answering questions in the chat, but did you talk about the manuscript record as not being reflective of a manuscript necessarily?
I could probably say more about that. So I think I mentioned that it's just a linking node. So there's not, it doesn't store any unique data. But it also, like, it's not a stable record, right? So this manuscript ID number, it has these entries linked to it right now, but that could change at any time, right? Because we're linking entries based on descriptive information and sources, we could make a mistake and link two entries that actually don't describe the same manuscript. So the manuscript record can change at any time. We can't offer a stable, like, uniform record for a manuscript because we're basing all of our data on secondary sources.
But you can, I think you can search. I think we capture the change history of manuscript records. So if you feel like there was a manuscript record that you know existed, we can probably get back to it eventually.
We do save the change history of every record. So that's in the tools in the sidebar here. This one's never been changed, so there's no data in this record. But we do, we store all the changes, and yeah, so in that way it's not completely unstable, but just know that the links are made and the links can change at any time.
There may be there may be two manuscript records that refer to the same manuscript.
Yeah.
That have not been merged. So it's a bit Lexi. But as long as you're aware of that and don't have expectations that this represents a manuscript, you'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
There was a question about searching within a search. So if you do a search, like a keyword search, and you come up with a list of results, the best thing to do is you can use the facets. So the facets will change depending on what's associated with the entries that appear in your search results. And so you can drill down using the facets, or just add more fields in an advanced search field.
So you'll see here I did a basic keyword search for Boethius to start, and then I added other filters here. Your selected filters are at the top, and you can get rid of these at any time. I'm just clicking that. And you can also go into the advanced search and add more filters this way too.
So there's another question, links from SIMS to ISTC, for example. Can you elaborate on that, Matt? Can I ask you to elaborate that on either in chat or in?
That was me, I confess.
That's all right.
Hi, Barbara.
Incunable short title catalog from University of St. Andrews. So a catalog of every book printed before 1600. So there's not a manuscript, so it's probably not in SIMS, but it was just a general question about whether there are any links from this database to other databases about of manuscripts.
No.
No, okay.
It doesn't mean that you can't do that. You know, if you're in an entry and you want to, or a personal observation and you want to make that link, but there's no formal relationship.
Okay. Yet.
Yeah. I mean, again, like, you know, you can do whatever you want to with this database, right?
Yeah.
If you decide that that's a project you want to do, you can say, I'm going to do that. We have people who are applying for grants and using the database as their data storage system, as their information retrieval system, which is great. So that's something that you can think about. It doesn't cost you anything, but it is, you know, we want it to be a user-driven resource.
Gotcha.
And if you have project ideas, we're happy to talk with you about them and figure out the best way for you to do them. We have our own priorities. We're doing lots of name authority cleanup work. So, you know, if you want to have all the manuscripts that are in Iceland entered,
right,
go for it. Knock yourself out. We'd love to have that data.
Okay. So could I'll horn in one more time and then I'll shut up, I promise. Yeah. So I'm just so excited by all of this. So last summer I spent a few days with Christina Dondi and got oriented to MEI and all your provenance information. I mean, it just seems so perfect for the two projects to have some interconnections. It's so rich. And I'm sorry, I get really carried away, so I'm gonna shut up. Okay.
No, I can get carried away about the crossover with that in our name authority. Like I would love to, that's sort of my next big project on the distant horizon, is to really focus on the name authority. work, because we have a lot of names that we, you know, could contribute to something like bio if they'll take us.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Just building on that too, Fragmentarium would be another database.
Yes.
Given you guys have limited traditionally to fragments that you might be able to combine and use. But my question is more relating to the, like, it's an amazing resource and I've used it for provenance research, but have you seen just any kind of anecdotal stuff from people applying for projects where they've been able to really creatively use the data set in new and interesting ways rather than strictly tracing one book's history from here to here to here? Like, has that been done? Is that underway?
We don't know about people using our, like, downloading the data and doing something differently with it. There's a project at the Institute for English Studies that but last year won a ERC grant to track networks of in the trade, in the manuscript trade from which Emma might have mentioned, sorry if I'm repeating this, 1900 to 1945. So that's like a 5-year project. So they're going to be a really interesting test case of what you can do working with the database, which is the phase that they're in now. And then once they've done their work extracting that data. But no, we don't have a good example yet. But if you have one, let us know. We'd love to see people doing that.
For sure. I'll give it some thought. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's another question from the chat. Is it possible to add records of pre-modern observations of individual manuscripts that are now lost? Yes. It can be a personal observation, or if there's a publication.
Yeah, they don't have to exist anymore. Like, that you can know that they burned up in a fire or something. But if you have data about them, we don't know where a lot of the manuscripts in the database are. So many of them are probably lost as well. That doesn't mean you should go in and make up records like without any evidence, but they don't have to exist anymore to be in the database.
So are there any further questions? I might have to run actually, but Emma can field them.
I think we've answered all of these. I'm just reading the list one more time. And it looks like we are right at 5. So if you have questions that we didn't answer, or if things come up, please contact us anytime. You all have my email now, so feel free to stay in touch. And I hope some of you will add some personal observations and start contributing in other ways. We'd love to have all of your knowledge in the database. So thank you all so much for coming, and stay well, and I hope to see you all in person someday.